Hey everybody, it's final guaranteed decision time, meaning Ironlad, should you spend the 6K tokens on him, given that he's going to be leaving that weekly spotlight section of the token shop? You can certainly still get him in the Series 4 and 5 section, but we want to look at every new card that comes out. We look at it right when it comes out, and then we want to wait until we gather some data. And that's what we've done for this video. And our hope is that we can help you maybe make a decision to go one way or another. We did a video previously about waiting for these sort of things, so hopefully you check that out and have waited. The quick answer, whether you should get him or not, is no. I'm hoping to convince you why I finally came to that answer at this point in time. Short answer to that is the data. And I'll say again, this is exactly why I think people should wait when these new cards come out, because there's always going to be a bunch of hype immediately after a new card, unless it's clearly trash that you're just kind of like, okay, no. I mean, honestly, there was no real hype around Snowguard. I think there was maybe a couple little things here and there. People are like, it's okay. But ultimately, there's always going to be hype, and that's where I'm saying watch content creators, wait, and then the final part of this is look at data. So I'll say here and now, I think you could probably skip him, and I also think you're going to be able to skip Howard the Duck too. I think they're both good cards and fun cards, but I don't think the 6K token pricing point is really worth putting your hard-earned dollars and or free tokens that you throw out the game towards this card. First step in this is understanding what Ironlad does and if it's worth it. I included this in the previous video that I did, so I'm just going to pull a quick clip from that and show it now. Said, well, he goes perfectly with Howard the Duck. The way he's going to work is when you play him on turn 4, or I guess if you bring him earlier, whatever text you've got on the top card of your deck, he copies, which basically means whatever you're about to pull next turn, Ironlad does. So you could get 2 of those cards. Could be a Galactus, could be a King, it could be a Doom, whatever it is. Are you a player who is paying attention to what cards you've got in your hand and what still remains in your deck, and whether you want to take a certain percentage chance on what card remains? What I mean by that, you've got 12 cards in your deck. Turn 1, you'll end up having 4. Turn 2, you have 5. Turn 3, you have 6. And by turn 4, you could have 7 in hand, leaving 5 cards still in your deck, which could be pulled from Ironlad. Now, if you use America Chavez, that could leave it for 4. So you have a 25% chance, or 20 if you're not running America Chavez, to know what card that is that you could pull from. Some players are going to be fine with that 25% or 20% risks, going, you know what, all 4 or 5 of those cards, I'm good with. Ironlad, go do your thing. Then the next part you're going to ask yourself is, does he make any archetypes for himself? The answer is no, he doesn't. The next question is, does he make any semi-unique decks for himself? Again, that's pretty much the same as an archetype, but still want to address maybe slightly different than its own archetype, and the answer again is no. All right, does Ironlad make bad decks good? No. So then it's, what does he do? It's got to be making at least good decks better, right? Let's look at the data. I'm going to use Untapped.gg solely for this analysis. I like their website. I will say my one beef with what they've got is I wish they had the last week or the last 7 days on this, or maybe even the last 10 days. We're looking at pool 3 and higher. We're looking at a player rank 2 start. I'm going to confine those levels. So we'll go from 50 to 99, 60, 70, 80, 90 to 99. At the end, I will look at Infinite Plus, even though I will give the caveat now that I think most players, when they get to Infinite, sort of just mess around. So I don't love looking at the data there, but we will look at it, at least in this video, because of what we're going to see from this data. I also like to look at average cubes. It is 200 plus games. Win rate sort of matters, but really you're trying to gain cubes. So what we're looking at here is basically all the top decks in the game, again, from level 50 to 99. I like to do that because this is going to incorporate some newer or lower players and not just the back-end end game type players. And everything we're going to look at, again, we're going to mainly focus on average cubes. We'll also look at the ranking of where the deck with Ironlad shows up. So this is like, let's just say 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4 and so on and so forth. So from the 50 to 99 range, and at the end of this, you'll realize that it's mainly from 50 to 60 because the decks do change quite a bit. So as certain decks fall off and the numbers change, I'm like, well, that was probably good in that range that we cut off. It's about Sarah Control, Patriot, They certainly have the stature deck that we're going to see a lot of. It's like, all right, well, as you scroll through here, and it's easy for me to see where Ironlad is because what I like about this is it grays it out if I don't have the card. So it's real easy to see. But when we're up here, and this is good to know as we scroll through these later, because I'm not going to go through each one of these as slowly, you don't see it popping up. Now, there's filters that you can do as well, but I like to see how many decks are in there before this new card shows up in a deck. So I don't want to filter for just that card. Well, we finally find Ironlad in a Darkhawk deck down here, and it's technically the 16th ranked spot. It's at 0.77 cubes. Got a good win rate, so it is certainly a solid deck there with a good win rate and average cubes. But does he show up again? And how are the Darkhawk decks without Ironlad? Because that's important too. Scrolling. Just scrolling. Well, I've already scrolled through this. He's nowhere else. He being Ironlad, nowhere else in the top 40 in here, which is bonkers. So from 50 to 99 shows up once, and it's in a Darkhawk deck. So let's look to see what exactly the impact of Ironlad is on the Darkhawk deck archetype. So we've just added Darkhawk into the deck. So now we're looking at all decks that have anything with Darkhawk in it. There you go. Look at, he's number 2. He's in the 2nd ranked Darkhawk deck, but there's one that gets 0.2 cubes higher that does not have him. So why would I want Ironlad if I'm in this range in this deck? Now, the deck that is higher than him has Jeff, which is also a newer card. But let's look at the deck after this. All right, this seems reasonable. It's like sort of a bounce Darkhawk type deck. It does have Nebula, which is a season pass, but otherwise, most of these cards are pretty readily available. And it's the same average cubes. One other thing to throw into this one that's better, it's also that stature deck, which is one of the decks that everybody's talking about. But you can basically see in here that these next decks that don't have Ironlad in it are almost just as good. I mean, and there are several in here. I understand Jeff pops up, but let's try to ignore those for any players who maybe aren't buying those newer cards. They're pretty good. This deck, I mean, even if you had Jeff in here, you could drop him for, I don't know, Nightcrawler or something. But this deck here, okay. I mean, there's, again, you've got the Darkhawk. Here's a super free-to-play friendly deck that does not have Ironlad. It does have our Darkhawk, obviously. That's, you know, about 0.1 away. Point being, in this range, Ironlad doesn't make sense. So now let's change it to 60. So the first time Ironlad shows up here is at spot 11. Last time it was 16. So in the 60 range, he moves up a little bit. It's that same Darkhawk deck with 0.77, exact same. You've got the Stature Black Bolt deck with Darkhawk a couple spots later and almost the same cubes. Again, no Ironlad. So let's filter for Darkhawk again. Again, you've got that one deck that I mentioned before. That's sort of the Stature. It's got the Jeff thrown in there. This one a little bit lower. But you have multiple options again right after that where, again, it's the Stature. That might be a little bit harder. But 0.75 cubes with a 57 win rate? What card in here is tough to get outside of Darkhawk? Arrow, Sarah, Rockslide, Shang-Chi, Polaris, Killmonger, Lizard, Scarlet Witch, Colossus, Zabu, maybe? If you didn't buy that season pass, Nova. Okay, then we've got a Jeff deck. Let's sort of ignore that. We've got another Stature deck. But where's Ironlad? He's nowhere to be found here. All right, so now let's go to 70. Again, you will see the average cubes here jump dramatically with what people are getting. Sarah Control, very good within this range at a 1.23. So these range very, very much matter to you as a player. A side note, as I go through this, there was a ton of Galactus decks. So again, scrolling. Guess what? Ironlad's nowhere in here in like the top 60. I scrolled, I looked, he wasn't in here anywhere. And I was like, okay. Apparently the Darkhawk deck just sort of falls off in this. And I mean the one with Ironlad, because Darkhawk, Stature, all these different decks up here, they're still here. 0.88, 0.75. Where's my Ironlad? Got a Sarah Hawk deck, another Darkhawk, a Doomwave with Darkhawk in it showing up. Again, we've talked about the Stature one ad nauseum. Where's our Ironlad? Let's find him. Here he is. Here he is with Stature again. 0.56 cubes. It's okay. It's not bad. The win rate is great at 63%, but it looks like there's not a lot of cube gains. You've, again, Stature deck, 0.51. The Darkhawk deck, 0.51. Again, looking at Stature without, look, Stature does better without Ironlad in this range. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 decks of the stature archetype with Black Bolt, etc., in front of the deck that has Ironlad. Now, the Ironlad average cube's 0.56. The top one here is 0.88. You got a 0.72. So between the 0.6, I'd say the one that you eventually get him at 0.56, there's a handful of decks. But again, he is not moving the dial on these decks as much as you would hope if you're going to spend 6,000 tokens. Let's move the dial to 80. Again, you are going to be scrolling. Spoiler, Ironlad shows up at spot 55. Again, it's a Darkhawk deck here. It's 0.48 average cubes. The win rate's pretty solid again at 55%. And remember, as we're looking at these, there's a shorter window with this because it is sort of the last weekish with 2 weeks with this season. But I actually like that because I want to know how good this card is doing right now. So if this is a Darkhawk deck, how many Darkhawk decks are better in this range without Ironlad? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 Darkhawk decks that are better than the one with Ironlad. I don't know, you tell me. Is that something that's making you want to get it? Again, we're in the range 80. Let's look at the last section here that we're going to look at from 90 to 99. Well, and because of what we're seeing, we are going to look at Infinite too. Now we bump it to 90. So in this one, again, we've got Darkhawk at 0.83. We've got a Death Wave. None of these have Ironlad, Sarah Control in here. These are all sort of the decks that you see everybody talking about being the meta a little bit. Sarah Hawk, Sarah Control, Doomwave, She-Not, Stature. Here we go. Stature with Ironlad. So this is the 9th spot, and this is at 0.6 cubes. It is 61% win rate. Again, a great win rate, but compared to other decks you could potentially be playing, is it the best? We've got a Darkhawk. She-Not. I mean, look at She-Not. Look at this. Psylocke is one tough card to get for sure. At least it was for me. But all the rest of these cards here, even that one, not so bad. Doomwave. Wave, I think, is going to get nerfed. I've been talking about that for some of the videos that I've been doing about the OTAs. But all these cards, super simple. Sarah Control. Outside of Hitmonkey, which maybe you either bought or didn't buy. Okay. Sarah Hawk. Again, Darkhawk's about to drop, but all of these other cards, totally accessible. Sarah Control, same thing with other than Hitmonkey if you're not buying the season pass, which honestly, for 10 bucks, if you're playing a game, 10 bucks a month isn't that bad. If you're interested in this game at all, I would just go ahead and get the season pass because it's totally worth it. Death Wave, again, all easy, good cards to get. Darkhawk, that's your general Darkhawk archetype. All of these, every single one of these is all pretty solid. I mean, and there's no filters here. It's just straight up 90 to 99, the lightest patch, what's good, what's winning. All of these decks are doing pretty well, and you don't really get to the point where you're talking about spending or anything along those lines until you get to Hitmonkey, which is a season pass, and then you don't get to Ironlad or even Jeff. I didn't see any. I mean, Jeff, Ironlad, none of these are up here. I mean, this is one of the things where I talk to people in some of the comments where they're talking about this is a pay to play game and stuff like I don't know, the stats say sort of otherwise, at least in this range, and seemed like that way in some of the other ranges too. And guess what about how much Ironlad shows up in the next, I don't know, 40-ish cards? Doesn't. So again, let's look at how this deck performs, the Stature deck, without Ironlad. So we're searching for Stature. We got Stature in that same range. Oh, hey, look, there's one ahead of it, 0.65. And that's exactly right. There is a deck ahead of the one that's got Ironlad and Jeff. The one ahead of it doesn't have Jeff. It actually has Nightcrawler. It's got a better win rate and a slightly better average per cube. I mean, for all intents and purposes, these are basically the same. But isn't that the point? Is that they're the same? Why would you spend on something if you have another deck option that doesn't need that very expensive card in it? I know what I'd pick. So because I was so surprised at all this, I was like, you know what? I need to know what at least Infinite looks like. So I'm like, let's look at Infinite. We're just going to go Infinite 100 plus. What do we have in this range? And again, typically people who get to Infinite, they sort of don't care as much. Maybe snap more, they stick around more. So the average cubes, I'm not sure it weighs as much as I'd normally look at it underneath Infinite or that level 100 mark. I mean, and right away you look, the first deck is Shuri and it's 1.44 average cubes. I'm like, this must be being played by somebody who is just playing against bots and just smoking them with Shuri. Next up, Sarah Control. Again, all decent cards to get other than maybe paying for Hitmonkey. Thanos Death, which is a great archetype. Again, big bad with Thanos. Sarah Control, a great deck that's easy to get. Bounce, a really fun deck to play. That one's got Hitmonkey in it. This Snap deck's got Negasonic and Jeff, so it's a little bit paid access to new cards. We got a Sarah Surfer deck in there that's got a Shadow King in it. And here we go. We've got Stature. So in Infinite, the Stature Darkhawk deck with Ironlad pops up at 0.72 cubes at a 61% win rate. This is pretty much the deck that you see a lot of people talk about when they're talking about that Stature Ironlad deck. It is solid, it is good, but how much better is it than anything else that you could potentially play with a lot of these other similar cards without Ironlad? So this is the 8th spot, and then Ironlad shows up again in the 21st spot, oddly enough with Patriot. And I was like, you know what? This deck, however, I could see being very interesting and fun with Ironlad. I feel like a deck like this, though same thing with Stature, would be a lot better with Ironlad. So in Infinite, does this pattern change? Do these decks actually finally get better with Ironlad? But again, we're going to constantly throw in that caveat of it's after Infinite. So let's filter for the Stature decks. Well, what do you know? It is the top one in this range. It's the top 2. It's the top 3. It's not until the 4th one, which still has Jeff in it, frankly, that you get a deck without Ironlad. Now, you can see all of these average cubes. It ranges from 0.72 to 0.61. So they're semi-close. So in Infinite, I would say, yeah, sure, Ironlad makes those decks better. But again, I'm asterisking all of that because it's after Infinite. So for fun, let's look for Patriot. Same thing. Ironlad makes Patriot better in the Infinite range. The top 1, the top 2, the top 3. The first one without Ironlad is in the 4th spot. Again, it's at 0.38 cubes. So that's a pretty significant drop off from at least the top deck. This one is basically the same. And then, you know, the one above that it's pretty close too. So this one with them over here is obviously the best one. So yes, in Infinite, Ironlad makes your decks better. So in conclusion, don't buy Ironlad unless you're a content creator or really just want to spend a bunch of money or tokens on a card that probably isn't going to improve your decks all that much, or at least in a range that really matters for your progression in game. So that's it. Did you buy them previously? Were you thinking about buying them? If you did buy them, do you regret it? Is there something in this video that I'm maybe not bringing up? I obviously went to the data and I was very soapboxy about it, but I am open to anything else that somebody might say. It's like, no, this is why you should buy him. And I would love to hear the reason behind that in the comments below so that I know why I might have missed something here. But just looking at this raw data, it doesn't make any sense to me. And I want to be clear, Ironlad is not a bad card. He's not. It is a good card. That is not the reason that I'm saying not to buy it. It's a good card. If you want a good card, Ironlad is a good card. It'd probably be super helpful in tournaments. But as far as in-game progression goes, while he is solid, I don't think the stats lie here. You're not going to get a lot of progression in-game with him. So for me, that means Ironlad is not a must-have card, especially given how few tokens you might get in this game. I do have a plethora built up, but that's because I've bought several offers. I'm a content creator who's trying to build his collection, who just started a few months ago, and I'm super frugal about what I spend, which is why I do videos like this to hope and help anybody who might be trying to make a decision. Again, I do this particular video towards the end of the week of the new card. I do one at the front end as well, and I try to convince people to just wait a little bit so that they can see how everybody sort of takes a card. And this is the last step to that, where you at least have almost a week's worth of data that'll help you in your decision making. Things can certainly change again in the future, but that's what this spot is for. That new card can potentially pop up here. You can get it here. It's no big deal. So that's all we've got in this video. Again, comment below if you think I've missed something or any of the points that you want to emphasize or bring up. Would love to chat with you guys. If you want to share with your aunts, uncles, nieces, neighbors, always appreciate that. And if this video has been helpful, please consider hammering down that like button. And until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day.